This lecture is on the adrenal glands, and I'm going to state right off the bat here that I will not be talking about every adrenal hormone. I will be limiting the conversation here to really one with a little bit about another one, simply because there's a lot that we have to cover in this course. So, as I said, just a little bit about the adrenal glands. So the adrenal glands then cap each kidney, as the name implies. Renal meaning kidney, ad meaning above. So basically you recall your kidneys, you have your two kidneys in your abdomen. Not a great picture, but basically you've got one here. You've got one here, glued to the interior dorsal body wall, and of course you've got the ureters coming out. But the point is, then you wind up having the adrenal glands right up here. So they will be like this. So here is a kidney, and then here and here are your adrenal glands. That and that then are the adrenal glands. And each gland then consists of an inner layer called the medulla. So we are now talking about the adrenal medulla. And an outer layer called the cortex. As outer layers are so often called, they are called the cortex, and in this case, this is the adrenal cortex. So, hormones then from both layers, so from the adrenal medulla and from the adrenal cortex, then both these layers then help the body to deal with stress. So the adrenal medulla then releases hormones that handle sudden stress. These are the hormones we usually think about having to do with the adrenal glands. But we also have the adrenal cortex, and this releases hormones that help the body to deal with long-term stress. So the adrenal medulla. This tissue is related to nerve tissue. And the hormones then released by the adrenal medulla are epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and this then is approximately 80% of the total secretion then of the adrenal medulla. So we have epinephrine, and then carrying on with this, we also have norepinephrine. This is another hormone of the adrenal medulla, and this then is also known as noradrenaline, and this then makes up about 20% of the secretion of the adrenal medulla. And then it is nerves of the sympathetic nervous system. Now you remember the sympathetic nervous system. This is a part of the nervous system over which you do not have voluntary control, and is specifically the part of the sympathetic nervous system that is like an overly sympathetic friend. It responds to your stresses, to your problems. It's the one that will say, oh, that's really terrible, and so on, in response to stressful events. So as I said, here we have epinephrine and norepinephrine, and the nerves of the sympathetic nervous system then regulate the secretion of these hormones. So that part of your nervous system over which you have no voluntary control and which is very sympathetic to the stresses you're enduring is the one that will secrete some adrenaline or some noradrenaline when it thinks you need it. So both hormones, that is to say epinephrine and norepinephrine, also known as adrenaline or noradrenaline, both hormones then produce what we call the emergency response, sometimes known as fight or flight, though there are other things that may be done in response to emergencies as well. But it produces they both produce the emergency response or a fight or flight reaction. So these then are secreted in response to sudden stress. So sudden stresses may be things like fear or anger or pain, and also physical exertion. And both hormones constrict blood vessels. So now I'm only going to give more detail on epinephrine. So epinephrine then increases your rate of metabolism, your rate of energy use, basically. It increases the rate of release of glucose. By the liver. So your liver stores glucose in the form of glycogen, and the glycogen basically gets broken down more quickly, and that glucose released into your bloodstream more rapidly when you suddenly have epinephrine in your system. So basically you get a hit of blood sugar when epinephrine is released. And it also increases the rate and the strength of the heartbeat. It increases your blood pressure. It increases your blood clotting rate. This is why heart attacks sometimes follow bad news. And it increases your rate of sweating. So imagine for a moment that you're driving your car and you hit a patch of ice during the wintertime, and there are cars in front of you that are stopped at a stoplight and there's nothing you can do, and you're sliding forward and you have to quickly turn the wheel and drive off down a ditch into the woods. Maybe you're on Route 138 there outside of Curry College. And so you have to drive into some trees and you're trying to avoid the big ones, and you hit a bunch of bushes and it all winds up okay. And you're fine, and the car is stopped, and you haven't hit anybody, and you're generally going to be okay, and you're sitting behind the wheel, and you're going because you are very frightened, and you just had your heartbeat get increased, your heart is pounding, your blood pressure has gone up, your blood clotting rate has gone up, though you may not realize that, and you're probably sweating a bit. And all of that is because you had this sudden emergency and your body responded by releasing, among other things, epinephrine. And that is it for this lecture.